there, Kim here. I am going to make a gluten-free bread today. Well, me and my fiance, we realized that we are gluten intolerant, so we started buying the gluten-free bread at the store. It's a little expensive and it doesn't always taste good. I got a bread maker for Christmas and I started using it and kind of playing around with different recipes, and so I came upon this recipe from a blog called glutenfreemommy.com, and I actually modified it a little bit to suit my tastes. So if you don't have a bread maker, you can do this on your own using an oven, but I find that the bread maker, it makes it a lot easier because you can just throw all the ingredients in there and let it go. My bread maker, I'm using a Hamilton Beach. It has a gluten-free bread setting, but it under that setting it actually does 2 kneads and 2 rises. And what I found is with gluten-free bread, it actually you don't need a second rise. So I will actually turn off the bread maker at that once it's done mixing and let it sit and rise on its own, and then I'll go just to the bake function. So these are the ingredients that you'll be using. There's a lot of flours that are going to be combined to make your gluten-free flour mix. Kind of picked some that will mask that kind of weird gluten-free flavor that sometimes is in breads. You want all of your ingredients to come to warm temperature, including the eggs here, and the yeast or any of the flours that you may keep in the refrigerator. I'm going to be using some coconut milk. I actually just took this out of the refrigerator. I'm going to be heating it up in the microwave, so this is okay to not be at room temperature for now. So you want to use your bread maker specifications. In mine, it's set where you throw in all the wet ingredients, the dry on top, you make a little well, and then you add your yeast. So let's get started. We'll start mixing all of the dry ingredients. So I'm just gonna mix them in a bowl, and you wanna make sure, unlike regular bread that you make in a bread maker where you can just dump them all in, you do wanna mix these separately because you want them to be fully combined when you put them in the bread maker because you're using a variety of different flour types. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to start with half a cup of rice flour. And then you want to use half a cup of quinoa flour. Now, personally, I don't like the taste of rice flour, and that's why initially I think in this recipe it called for a full cup, and I cut it back and added more of some of the other types of flours. And so play around with the flour types to get the flavor that you desire. Then you want 1 full cup of millet flour. 1 full cup of millet. Half a cup of tapioca flour. 1/3 of a cup of potato starch. Now, if you don't have potato starch, you can also use cornstarch. You're going to want to use 1/3 of a cup plus 1/4 of a cup of sorghum flour. So this is kind of how I substituted some of the rice flour. I'm going to be using sorghum instead. So that's the flours. You're also going to add your tablespoon of xanthum gum, which is a common ingredient in gluten-free bread. It binds everything together. So, kind of replaces that aspect of what gluten does. If you buy a little container like this of it, it runs usually between $12 to $15, but this will last you about 20 to 25 loaves of bread. So it's definitely worth the money. I'm also going to add 1/4 of a cup of flaxseed. I feel like this gives it a really hearty flavor. So, plus it's filled with omega-3s, so it makes it a little healthier as well. And then this salt. So I'm using 1½ teaspoons of kosher salt. So those are our dry ingredients, and now I'm just going to give them a quick mix. So I'm gonna set this aside, and now we're gonna combine all the wet ingredients. So again, like I mentioned, you want all of your wet ingredients to be at room temperature. So I'm gonna start with the eggs. You're gonna use 3 eggs. You're gonna use 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. 1 tablespoon of honey. I'm also going to use 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. Okay, so once you've added now the brown sugar, we're gonna add some coconut oil. You can use canola oil, melted butter, any kind of fat that you'd like. I like the taste of the coconut oil because it kind of adds a nuttiness to the bread. So the thing with the coconut oil, when you buy it, it is hard, and so I'll have to melt it to turn it into a liquid. So see, it just looks white. So you want to use 1/4 cup of whatever fat you're going to be using. So usually I kind of just eyeball 1/4 cup here, and then I melt it, and then I'll measure it. Microwave this for maybe about, say about 30 seconds. Keep an eye on it. So while that's microwaving, we can get the rest of our wet ingredients ready. So the last ingredient is 1½ cups of liquid. So you can use water, you can use regular milk, you can use coconut milk, rice milk, soy milk. We don't eat any dairy in this house, so we're going to be using coconut milk. The last time I made this, I used water. So what you want to do is you want to use the warm liquid. So I'm going to be heating this up in the microwave as well. So I'm going to actually give this a shake. Now this is just a starting off point for your liquid. A lot of times you will need to add more in the bread machine, and in that case I'm going to be using just plain water. But we're going to start off with 1½ cup of the coconut milk. So we'll put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds and see what temperature it's at, and then heat it up more if it needs to be. So I just pulled out the coconut oil. Now I'm going to heat up the coconut oil. You can see that it has now liquefied most of it. So now you can kind of mix it to get rid of anything else. You want to make sure it's not too hot because you don't want to curdle your eggs. Pour that in. And check on our coconut milk and see how it's heating up. So you want it to be warm. So around, I'd say between 100 and 120 degrees. Right now it's not warm yet, so I'm going to put it back in the microwave for another 30 seconds. In the meantime, I can beat the other liquid ingredients with a whisk. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, that feels good. So you want it to be warm to the touch, like lukewarm temperature. And now I'm going to add it to the rest of our liquids. And as I do that, I'm actually going to whisk it just in case it's a little warmer than the eggs. Again, we don't want the eggs to curdle, and that can happen if your water or milk is too warm when you add it to the egg mixture. In essence, you're cooking your eggs if you do that, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to add the milk now. And give it a really good whisk. So now it's time to add all of the ingredients into the bread making pan. Okay, so now you want to add your ingredients to the bread maker by the bread maker's specification. So on mine, you add the wet ingredients first. You just want to pour those in. Then you want to pour the dry ingredients on top of that. So I'm going to slowly add these because they could might get a little messy. Okay. And you want to make a little well on the top for the yeast to go in. So I made a little pouch right there. And then you're gonna add 1 packet of bread yeast, or if you have a jar of it, you can put 2 1/4 teaspoons. Make sure your bread pan is locked. Close it, and now I'm going to set it to the gluten-free cycle for 2 pounds, and we're just gonna let it mix for about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna hit start here. You can see it starts mixing. You don't wanna walk away from your bread maker while it's beginning to mix, because depending on the temperature, the humidity, your elevation, it kind of depends on all those factors on how much liquid you really need into your bread dough. So you want to keep an eye on it. It's starting to mix now, but once it kind of gets incorporated, you'll want to check to see the texture, consistency of it, and at that point we may need to add more liquid. So now at this point it's starting to mix, and I want to make sure that everything gets incorporated, so I'm going to use a rubber spatula to scrape down the sides as it is mixing. So you can see how on the sides here it doesn't all get in. So you want to kind of just scrape it down, make sure everything gets incorporated. You can definitely see that this is a little too thick. So I'm going to start adding some warm water. This is just tap water. And a little bit. Kind of try to mix the dough. Still looks like it needs a little bit more. Make sure all the, you can even see down here there's still some dry flour that hasn't even gotten incorporated yet. So you want to really, sometimes you have to kind of just mix with the bread maker. Let it mix for a little bit, and then we'll see if we need to add any more. Okay. And we'll just check it again in a minute or two and see if it needs a little bit more water. Again, like I said, we're going for like a quick bread muffin thickness or consistency in the dough. Good consistency, so I'm going to let it finish mixing on its own. And once that's done, I'll stop the bread maker from its current cycle and let it just rise on its own for an hour. Okay, so it's done mixing. I'm going to turn off this cycle, which on mine you just press the stop button for a few seconds. Now I'm just going to open the lid, and I'm going to just flatten out and redistribute all of the dough in the pan. So now that's all redistributed, I'm going to close the lid, and I'm going to set my timer for an hour, and I'm just going to let it rise. You want it to double in size. So if you don't get that, then your yeast may not be good. So yeah, we'll be back in an hour to check on it. So the dough has finished rising. It's been an hour now, and as you can see, it is it's doubled in size. You can see it's gotten quite large. Okay. So now it's time to bake, so I'll close the cover again. I'm just going to press start on my bake cycle, and it's just going to bake for about an hour. Okay, so the bread is now done. We're going to take it out of the bread maker and let it cool. You can see it's got this nice golden crust to it. That's what you want. Okay, now just let it cool for about take an hour until it's room temperature, and then we'll cut into it and try it. Okay, our bread has finally cooled and now we can slice it. So let's give it a cut. I'm using a bread knife, and you just want to use a light sawing motion so that you don't kind of push the bread down. It's got a nice crust, you can see. There it is. There's the bread. Very hearty and great. And I'm gonna try it now with some homemade mixed berry jam and see how it tastes. So usually I like to toast this up, but since it just came out of the bread maker, it's still a little warm. So no need for that. We'll just... So if you're not going to eat it right away, I would say maybe put it in a bag, put it in the freezer, and it'll last until you thaw it out. But I think we're going to eat this over the next few days. Okay, let's give it a try. That's good. That's all I can say. That is good. Doesn't have that kind of weird gluten-free taste. Just tastes like a nice, hearty, nutty kind of bread. Good for sandwiches. Good for breakfast, for toast, with jam. I think we knocked this one out of the park. Well, that's it, and that's how you make a fabulous gluten-free bread in a bread maker. Thanks for watching.